Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at a postcard that's unlike most others you've seen in this series. Instead of a mountain, a city skyline, or a landmark, this one shows a mural painted on the walls of the Missouri State Capitol in Jefferson City, and the subject isn't a politician, a general, or even a statesman. It's Jesse James, Missouri's most infamous outlaw. That's right. The same Jesse James who robbed trains and banks, who was hunted by lawmen, and who was shot in the back by one of his own gang members, has a place of honor, or perhaps infamy, on the Capitol walls. And not only that, but here he is, reproduced on a brightly colored linen postcard. This one in my collection was published by Blair Cedar and Novelty Works of Camdenton, Missouri, and printed by Colorpicture out of Boston. On the front, you see a dramatic train robbery scene. Jesse James and his men are front and center, stopping a locomotive under the cover of night. Around the edges of the mural, workers and farmers carry on with their labor, tying the outlaw story back to Missouri's broader history. It's part history, part folklore, and part state identity, all painted into one mural and captured here on a piece of cardstock. Let's learn more. The Missouri State Capitol is filled with murals. When the current Capitol building was completed in 1917, the state quickly decided to adorn its walls with art that told the story of Missouri. Over the following decades, artists created sweeping frescoes and murals covering subjects as wide-ranging as Native American life, frontier settlement, agriculture, industry, politics, and cultural achievement. Some of these were funded as part of the wave of public art during the New Deal era. Across the country, the Works Progress Administration and other programs hired artists to create murals in courthouses, schools, and state buildings. The goal was simple: give work to artists during the Great Depression, and in doing so, enrich public spaces with art that reflected local history. Missouri's approach was bold. It didn't just highlight its heroes. It also included figures like Jesse James, who symbolized a wilder, more turbulent past. By doing this, the Capitol told a fuller story, one that didn't shy away from conflict, violence, or controversy. The Jesse James mural itself is painted in a style typical of the 1930s, bold outlines, simplified figures, and a sense of motion. The train roars across the center of the scene, smoke billowing, while Jesse and his men spring into action. Their movements are almost theatrical, as if the outlaw story itself has been staged. Around the edges, everyday Missourians, farmers with their tools, workers carrying loads, remind the viewer that while Jesse James may have been larger than life, the real backbone of the state was its ordinary people. So who was Jesse James? Born in Clay County in 1847, Jesse grew up in a Missouri that was deeply divided. Before and during the Civil War, Missouri was torn apart by conflict between Unionists and Confederates. Neighbor fought neighbor in a bloody guerrilla war often called Bleeding Kansas. As a teenager, Jesse joined the ranks of Quantrill's Raiders, a Confederate guerrilla band led by William Quantrill. They became infamous for raids, ambushes, and atrocities, including the 1863 Lawrence Massacre in Kansas, where civilians were killed and the town was burned. Jesse was part of that violent world. By the time the Civil War ended, he was hardened, experienced, and accustomed to a life outside the law. In 1866, Jesse and his brother Frank carried out what is considered the first successful daylight bank robbery in U.S. history at Liberty, Missouri. They rode into town, entered the Clay County Savings Association, and walked out with nearly $60,000. It shocked the nation and announced the arrival of the James brothers on the outlaw stage. From there, the robberies piled up. Trains were a favorite target. The Rock Island Railroad and the Iron Mountain Railroad both fell victim. Jesse's gang also hit stagecoaches, county fairs, and small-town banks. Each robbery was reported in newspapers across the country, sometimes with exaggerated detail. The press played a big role in shaping Jesse's image, sometimes painting him as a Robin Hood figure standing up against the power of banks and railroads. But make no mistake, Jesse's raids were violent. Bystanders and passengers were often killed. Yet the myth of Jesse James as a folk hero continued to grow. For poor farmers and laborers in Missouri, many of whom distrusted big banks and railroads, Jesse seemed like one of their own, striking back at the powerful. The turning point came in 1876 with the raid on the First National Bank in Northfield, Minnesota. Jesse, Frank, and their gang rode into town intending to rob the bank, but the townspeople fought back with guns. The raid turned into a street battle. 2 townsmen were killed, but most of the gang was either shot down or captured. Only Jesse and Frank managed to escape. The failed raid marked the decline of the James gang. For the next 6 years, Jesse kept a lower profile, living under assumed names and trying to recruit new followers, but the law was closing in. On April 3, 1882, Jesse James was killed in his own home in St. Joseph, Missouri, by Robert Ford, a gang member who hoped to collect a state reward. Jesse was just 34 years old. His funeral drew crowds, and his death cemented his legend. After his death, Jesse James became more famous than ever. Ballads like the Ballad of Jesse James were sung across America. Dime novels turned his life into pulp adventure stories, often inventing episodes out of whole cloth. By 1908, Jesse was the subject of one of the very first motion pictures, The James Boys in Missouri. Since then, Hollywood has returned to his story again and again with actors like Tyrone Power, Robert Wagner, Brad Pitt, and others portraying him on screen. Jesse's story appealed because it straddled the line between fact and myth. He was a criminal, yes, but also a symbol of rebellion, daring, and defiance. In many ways, he became America's outlaw archetype, the one against whom all others were measured. So why would Missouri include Jesse James in its capital murals? The answer lies in the way Missouri saw its own history. Jesse wasn't painted there as a hero. He was painted as part of the story, an unavoidable piece of the state's past. His train robberies symbolized the lawlessness and violence that shaped Reconstruction-era Missouri. His legend showed how folklore can grow out of chaos. By including him, the Capitol acknowledged that Missouri's history wasn't only about statesmen and soldiers, it was also about the figures who lived outside the law, but still left an indelible mark. And that brings us back to the postcard. Why would someone put this mural on a card to mail home? Because Jesse James wasn't just Missouri's outlaw, he was Missouri's legend. Tourists who visited the Capitol saw the mural, marveled at it, and bought the postcard as a keepsake. It was both a souvenir of the building and a slice of American folklore they could slip into an envelope. For me as a collector, this card is special because it captures that mixture of art, history, and legend. It's bold, unusual, and it tells a story that's not neat and tidy. It reminds me that the past has its heroes and its villains, but sometimes it's the villains who are remembered most vividly. That's today's postcard from the past. A mural of Jesse James painted on the walls of the Missouri State Capitol, reproduced on a linen postcard and preserved in a collection like mine. It shows us that history is never just about dates and names. It's about the people, the stories, and the myths that shape how we see ourselves. And if you have old postcards laying around your house, I'd love to see them. You can send them my way. Just go to the contact link on ancestralfindings.com and let me know. I'll be glad to share my address with you. Who knows, your postcard might be the next one I feature on the Ancestral Findings podcast. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups. Explore thousands of articles and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.